our Wi-Fi. We were able to do that. So proud of us. And we put together our bed frame this morning. So it's just like the accomplishments just never end. So anyway, it's very nice to see all of you. Let's start. It's a few minutes. It's 8 o'clock at night in Israel. So let's go ahead and say Shema. And then we'll say our bracha for learning together. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hashem, our learning today should be in the merit of the soldiers, safety of our soldiers. It's so challenging. And refuah shlema for those who have been injured and for everybody. And we should have peace and we should have more miracles in the final geula. And hello, Joyce and Kathy, and a special refuah shlema to you, Joyce.
And Ellen.
Yes, Carol. Yes, Carol.
Yeah, I saw on Facebook last night that Jen Corman's mom passed away.
Oh, thank you for telling me. I'm so sorry.
Susan Jen. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much for telling me. I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you. I'll be in touch with her. Thank you, Carol.
And Isabel wants you to know that we had to say goodbye to her service dog, Buddy, also.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really hard. I'm sorry to hear that.
We got to bury him up in Conifer on her trainer's property, so that was nice.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I'm sure that was meaningful and hopefully a comfort to have him close by. Okay, thank you for telling me. Please give her my regards and tell her I'm sorry for her loss.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. This week's parsha is Parshat Vayechi, the very last parsha of the book of Bereshit, of the book of Genesis. And Vayechi means "and he lived." And it concludes the telling of all of the stories, all of the narrative about our avos, our imachot, our matriarchs, our mothers, and our fathers. And when we begin next week, we'll be already in the book of Shemot, in the book of Exodus, and starting that whole scene. But for this week, we are in Parshas Vayechi. It is also called it's called Shabbat Chazak, which is a Shabbos of strength, because every time we end a Sefer of Torah, we end with Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Strength, strength, and we will be strengthened. And I learned something about the word chazak that really was helpful to me that I wanted to share with you. There are two words, there's other words, actually there's more than two words, but two words that are used often for strength are koach, strength is koach, and also chazak, to be strong. Chazak also means like a sense of like something that's challenging, of chazak. V'nit chazek, and we will strengthen one another, and it gives like a sense of toughness kind of strength. So what's the difference of strength? In order to strength, I can have a lot of koach to do something. So in Israel, when kids don't want to do something, they just say, "Ein li koach," I don't have the energy. And it usually is accompanied by one shoulder raise like this. It goes, "Ein li koach." And sometimes it's just the shoulder raise, and you don't even need the words because you know it means "Ein li koach," I don't have the energy, the strength to do something. So that's one kind of strength. But chazak is a different kind of strength, and you might recognize it, which I somehow did never notice this. When we sing Eitz Chaim Hi, when we with the Torah, Eitz Chaim Hi, it is a tree of life, and then you fill in the words in English. It says, "to those who hold fast to it." That's how it's usually translated, something like that in your Siddur, if you look in the English. But the words are Eitz Chaim Hi Lamachazikim Ba. From the word Lamachazikim, those who are mechazek, to hold on to it. But it was like, wait, I thought chazak means to be strong. but machazikim ba, who hold on to it. This kind of chizuk, of chazak, means to hang on to something and to grasp it and not let go. That's a different kind of strength than koach of ainli koach, I don't have the energy to do it. This is the energy to give chizuk to somebody, is to give them the ability to hang on, to hang in there. So when we have heard, if you've seen the different videos that the soldiers have posted, that they're talking about, that we talked about this a few weeks ago already, when they receive the pictures that the kids draw them in the guns, or the letters to the soldiers, and they tape them on the outside of their tanks. And they say, this gives us chizuk. This gives us strength to continue on. Now, those pictures are not adding to the koach of those tanks. That's not giving them more firepower. It's giving them more stick to it and hold in onto it and hang in their power. And that's what we're talking about when we come to the end of the Sefer book of Torah, is chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. We will be strengthened to hang on to this Torah, and we will be strengthened by it to hang on to the lessons, the messages, the insight, the wisdom, the inspiration, all of that. That's what's going to strengthen us to go to the next step. Everyone is needing chizuk, and everyone is talking about in Israel. I'm saying here because, we're all here. It's geographical differences don't make a difference. We're all here. We know the situation that we're in. Everyone needs chizuk. The people who have been out of their homes that were destroyed in southern Israel need chizuk. The families whose husbands, brothers, sons, or whatever are serving in the army, they need chizuk. The soldiers themselves need chizuk. Everyone needs chizuk. And the beautiful thing about it is that two groups of people who both need chizuk can give chizuk to one another. So that doesn't mean that you have to have a surplus of chizuk in order to give to somebody else. So when people go to a shiva house, when they're going to be Menachem Avel, to comfort mourners, what are people inevitably saying? They received more chizuk from the people who were sitting shiva than what they were able to give to the other people. Everyone's saying, no, you gave me chizuk. No, you gave me chizuk. And what is the key to that? It's the coming together and the exchange of it. It reminds me more of what we experience in one of our upcoming holidays, not quite yet, of Purim, of Mishloach Manot. If I give you a hamantashen and a can of Coke, and you give me a hamantashen and a can of Coke, in the end, we both have what we started with, but something happened in the connection, and the connection is a place of chizuk. So we are seeing this incredible amount of chizuk that is being generated by people being able to hang on and hang in there. So we spoke with our daughter-in-law, Dahlia, last week before Shabbos, and she shared she was so excited at Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is the organization that you make Aliyah through, but they have all sorts of other programs and things like that for people. They hosted at their site in Yerushalayim a day of chizuk for the women whose husbands are away, so for soldiers, and I think it may have been for women who have been displaced also, I'm not sure. But they had like spa treatments, they had therapy sessions, they had massages, they had, dancing, they had all of these things. And they also had a challah baking, which when you make challah and you have enough to be able to take challah to make the bracha, and that's a place you can also do it in the merit of healing and strengthening. And they did these, and our daughter-in-law, she was asked to do the challah baking and to explain it and to do that as a program. And she said she went to the same thing. She went to give strength to these women. And she said it was so thrilling and exciting to be part of these women who were smiling and they're reaching out to each other. And everybody, if you didn't know that these women were all being so incredibly challenged, they and their families, you would have thought it was just, like choices. You would have thought they just got together to have a fun evening out. Instead of no, these are people who are really really overwhelmed. And yet they all came together. Different people gave their talents to be able to help. And it was really incredible. So when we say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek, when the Jewish people come together, almost in any environment, we have the ability to be mechazek each other, to give chizuk to another person just by being there and sharing the experience with them, which is a fabulous thing to know because people are starting to kind of run on empty. So how do you recharge? If it's your phone, you plug it in, and if you're tired, you go to sleep. But sleep doesn't give you chizuk. Sleep gives you just physical energy and it restores you a little bit, but there's something at the emotional, spiritual, psychic place that doesn't touch. There has to be another place. So we get chizuk from our spiritual involvement. Learning Torah gives us chizuk, davening, saying psalms, doing mitzvahs, doing acts of hesed. All those things take energy, but they give us energy, and the specific energy they give us is chizuk. So this comes from the word chazak, and we will say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. This is a Shabbos of chizuk, and everyone needs it, that everyone's starting, as I said in my message, when the war first started, the first day, my friend's son who said, how we had the 6-day war? This is going to be the 3-day war. It's like, no, it's not. And this is a long time already for people to be operating at full intensity. And so there needs to be chizuk. People I know from Denver are coming. People have been coming to Israel to help out and do specific tasks, whether it's in agriculture or medicine or packing meals or whatever it is that people are doing, is just an incredible source of chizuk. And knowing about it, even not being the direct beneficiary, should give us all chizuk about how amazing the Jewish people are and what heights we are able to ascend to, especially in such challenging times. It's really, really totally overwhelming, really overwhelming. So when we understand that this is how the every book of Torah ends, but specifically this first one of Bereshit, that Yaakov, it ends with Jacob and his family are now down in Egypt. And we know what's coming. We know what's coming is that they're going to live there. They're going to expand there. It's as the land is going to kind of suck them in, and they're going to be eventually oppressed and enslaved for 210 years. So the curtain is closing on the family, and there's going to be a period of incredible darkness, and we don't hear anything about this time. The Torah is silent about this time. All we know is what's going to happen going into this challenging time. Yaakov is going to give his children blessings. He can't tell them when the end of time is going to be or how it's going to happen, but he can tell them what their blessings are, what their gifts, their talents, their missions are. And that way he can prepare them to face whatever challenges are going to unfold over the decades, centuries, millennium, all that time that's going to pass until we get to the end of days. So we know that a child, or even people who aren't children, head off on a trip, and as soon as you pull out of the garage, it's like, are we there yet? When are we going to get there? Are we there yet? And it's very hard to embark on a journey when you don't know when the end is, how it's going to look, where it's going to be. We have friends in Denver. The father, Robert Salarabi, if any of you know him or have heard his story, that he and his brother were spirited out of Iran by people who you paid to get out. And they traveled for a very, very long time. The people who took them, you didn't even know if you could trust them or if they were going to kill you or whatever to get them out of the country because of the dangers of being Jewish in Iran. That the person who was their handler always told them, it's around the next bend. We just need to go around the next bend. That if he would have told them, and when they finally got there, I don't know, like a week later, whatever, it was like, why did you keep telling us that it was like around the next bend? He said, if I would have told you what we had in store and what the risks were, that it would have been, you wouldn't have been able to handle it. And so I just kept telling you it was around the next bend because, like, well, for sure I can hang in there until the next bend. So we're kind of in the same situation. It's like, we don't know what this is going to look like, but we need to know who we are, what our mission is, what we're supposed to be doing, and how we're supposed to respond. So this is what we're going to focus on, and we're going to focus on it in a very, I think, I found it inspiring. I hope you will as well. This was from a shir from Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer, and he speaks about Parshas Vayechi, looking at the very first word of the parsha. So let's open up and take a look. And we are on page 268, 269, which is Genesis chapter 47, verse 28. Chapter 47, verse 28, it says, Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So it opens up, and the very first word of the parsha is Vayechi, and he lived. It says that what does this mean? It says he lived there for 17 years. So after reuniting with Joseph, he had 17 good years of peace. His sons were all reunited. There was peace, though we actually find out at the end of the parsha that the brothers were a little nervous that after Jacob died, that Joseph was going to take revenge on them, but we're not going to talk about that part this time. We're going to talk about Jacob and his life, Vayechi, and Jacob lived. So there's a commentator called the Da'as Zakenim. I don't really know much about them. The Da'as Zakenim comments, and it's his commentary on this that we're going to take a look at. Says that the word Vayechi tells us, and he lived, it's going to tell us how many years of Jacob's life he considered to be good years. Now he lives, because it says at the end of that verse, were 147 years. So he lived 147 years. The question is, how many of those years did Jacob consider really good years? It says the answer is in the word Vayechi. What's the gematria of Vayechi? The Vav equals 6. The 2 Yuds equal 10 each, and the Chet equals 8. So we have 6 plus 20 is 26, plus 8 is 34. It says 34 years were the good years, what Jacob considered the good years of his life. What were those years? It says the first 17 years of Joseph's life before he was sold by his brothers, and the final 17 years of Jacob's life when he was reunited with Joseph and all of his sons. And all of the other years, he said, you really couldn't call that a life. So this is very interesting. The question is, what does that mean? How do we evaluate our life? He says, and Jacob was considered, now we can't say that he was flawed, but he was a human being, so he was flawed, like everyone is, but at such a high level. Jacob, Yaakov, we have to understand, out of all of the patriarchs, is considered the choicest. Now, you can make a good argument for any of the patriarchs to be the choicest, or any of the matriarchs to be the choicest, but Yaakov is considered the one who is at the top. So much so, it says that it's his face that's on one of the legs of the Kisei HaKavod, of the throne of glory. It says that Yaakov's face is on there because he's the choicest. Yaakov, who's also known as Yisrael, says we get our name as the Jewish people from Yaakov. We're not called Bnei Yitzchak. We're not called Bnei Avraham. We are called Beit Yaakov, the house of Jacob, or Bnei Yisrael. So we come from him. So he was considered the choicest. Now, you know, in Fiddler on the Roof, when Tevye says, you know, we're the chosen, and God, couldn't you just for some time just like choose somebody else? It's like, you're the chosen one. What would you expect? The chosen, greatest tzaddik, what should that person's life be like? You'd think he should get like the really good life. He should get like the prize life. Boy, God must really love you, because look at, you are certainly chosen. Look at your life. It says, look at Jacob's life. He suffered more than any of the other patriarchs. How did he suffer? He said he started suffering in the womb already. Already suffering in the womb. We know that when Rivka was pregnant with Jacob and Esau, that there was already a struggle in the womb, and that Jacob was born holding on to Esau's heel, and that there was a conflict between them, and that Jacob ends up having to leave his home His brother wants to kill him. He has to go then and live with Laban, and he works with Laban, who is a trickster, deceptive, switches his wives. He works for 20 years, never mind his employer, his working conditions as a shepherd, 20 years sleeping outside in the fields. Says, and we have a kind of a Disney World view of shepherds, like, oh, the shepherd, very pastoral, out there with the flocks. It's like, it's not like that. And I have to say, living this now and seeing that like almost every day when we drive along to see the shepherds with the sheep and the goats on the mountains and kind of keeping them all together. You have to protect them from wild animals. You're outside with them. The sun is beating down on you during the day. It's freezing and raining at night. All of these things, it's like his working conditions were terrible. His family conditions were terrible. So he has that. And then when he leaves, Esau comes to meet him with 400 armed men, and him not knowing whether he's going to get killed then and his family wiped out. Then after that, his daughter Dinah is abducted and raped. And he has the whole thing with his sons Levi and Shimon wiping out the city of Shechem and not having to worry now is he going to be wiped out again by people who are going to take revenge. And then his son Yosef is sold and he's gone for another 22 years. It's like, that's the chosen life. I hate to see what the life is if you're like the wicked person. This is the tzaddik's version of your life. It's like, now you know you've really been chosen. So what was going on with this? Couldn't God have arranged a nicer life for Yitzchak? Haven't we all, each in our lives, sometimes wondered, like, Hashem, can't you give me a break? I've had so many challenges. Can't I want to serve you. It's not like I'm looking I don't need like to go on a cruise. I just need to have a little bit of peace and quiet so I can serve you. I will daven better. I'll do mitzvahs better. I'll be able to be nicer to my friends and family if I could just have a little rest. It says this was understood as what Jacob wanted. Where do we see that he wanted this? So it's pointed out that in parsha, and you don't need to turn to it, but you can if you want. The parsha Vayeshev. Parsha Vayeshev is on page 199. It's chapter 37, verse 1. Page 199. It says, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz mugurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. Sounds very harmless. Jacob settled in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. It says Vayeshev says he settled there. It says he wanted to settle, meaning he wanted to just settle down and just have some peace and quiet. And that Hashem, this is according to the commentary of the Midrash, all say this was a mistake on Yaakov's part. It says it's not enough for the tzaddik, for the righteous Yaakov, to know that he will have the ultimate pleasure in the world to come. He thinks he should also be resting in this world. That's not what this world is for. That's not what his life is for. That's for the world to come. If you don't understand that, then you're like, just give me a break. But when we understand that there's something else going on, which is what we're going to talk about, is what is this world? What is our life all about? And then when we understand that, we will have a different approach to all the challenges that come to us from being this blessed, chosen people who have this chosen life that seems to be one challenge after the next. And everybody's on the continuum here of how we're experiencing our challenges. Some people seem to have a lot more of them, but we all have them. And when we understand that this is part of the structure of living, it will give us a different attitude. So Yaakov is held accountable for the fact that he wanted to settle, that he wanted to have Vayeshev Yaakov. But what happens then after that? It says this is right after that is when the brothers become jealous of Joseph. And this whole parsha is about Joseph being sold. It's like, oh, that worked out real well. You wanted to settle down. Well, now we're going to put in a real big crisis. Now your sons are going to sell your favorite son and sell him down into Egypt. And then your life is going to take a really sharp turn in the direction that you did not want. So how are we to understand this? So again, when we talk about Yaakov, we're talking about somebody at a very high level, and whatever the avos and imahos did, our mothers and fathers, what they did and how they acted, the fact that you are an Av or an Aim, a mother or father of the Jewish people means you're the foundation. So the foundation has to be very solid and straight in order for the building that's going to be built on top of it, which is we, the Jewish people, for eternity to stand on, which means just like in a foundation, anything that's not quite right, just because, oh, it doesn't really matter, it's gonna be underground. I'm sitting here now, thank God, in our condo in Century Village, but when we were here in the spring, we never got to live here because we had like one thing after the next happen for simple remodeling. And even the simple remodeling of changing a bathtub to a shower, it had to go through so many levels of inspection to make sure the shower was right, that it was on the proper tilt for drainage so that it wouldn't go over, flood, whatever, and overflow and cause mold and then destroy the people below, even though we had a flood for other reasons. It's like, when I get in the shower, I don't say, wow, I'm so glad the angle of the shower works exactly right so that it's whatever. It's like, it's all under the tile. What do I care? It's like, I care a lot. So how things are led, it had to be inspected. And that one of the things had to be redone because it wasn't quite right. So when we're talking about the avot and imahot, our mothers and fathers, when we look at like how closely Hashem is looking at them, it's not to be mean. It's to be appropriately concerned and appropriately attentive to how strong and straight are the pillars of what's going to be the resting place, the foundation for the Jewish people. So Yaakov's life here is going to be instructive. So what is it that this is teaching us about how we're supposed to understand our lives? Okay, let's take a look at this. Again, this comes from Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer. And we want to understand, how do we understand a life that is filled with challenge when we think that we should have a break and just be able to relax a little bit? It's like, is that really what we're here for? So very interestingly, he brings up Alan Dershowitz, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, says that he wrote a book called The Vanishing American Jew. And he was teaching a class at Harvard about this. And they were talking about what each religion in the world has contributed to humanity in the process of civilization, which is kind of a separate subject. And in the class, one of the students said, we're evaluating what religions contributed, shouldn't we be also kind of rating God on how well did God do creating the world? Because I think if you take a look at it, I'm not sure what we would say his contribution has been. So like, okay, they went through this whole analysis and said they evaluated, and to kind of summarize the evaluation, it was fair in that it looked at all the amazing things that are in the world. It's like, okay, there's love, there's beauty, there's palm trees, there's flowers, there's friendship, there's all these things, but there's a lot of things that are terrible. There are tsunamis, there are hurricanes, there are diseases, there are murderers, there are rapists, there's cruelty, there's so many other things. And the grade that they ended up giving God was a B-, a B- as the creator of the world. And Alan Dershowitz writes this in his book, because how can you say, you can't really give all these horrible things, you got to mix us in. I mean, I was actually surprised it was B- and not a C, because C is average, but B-, that was being generous. God gets a B-. So Rabbi Schaefer says if he was evaluating the evaluation of what the class discussed and what Professor Dershowitz, who is a smart person and Jewish and a friend of the Jewish people in many ways, but he doesn't exactly understand Judaism. Big problem. You can have somebody who knows a lot of things, but who might miss the main idea. So Rabbi Schaefer said he would give Professor Dershowitz a D for his evaluation of God. And the D was for the word dumb, not just a D, but D for dumb, a dumb evaluation. It says, why is it a dumb evaluation? It's like, how do you evaluate God as the creator of the world if you don't know what the intention of creation was? So he gave as an example, he held up a pen and said, this is a lousy toothpick. Whoever designed this as a toothpick missed the boat completely. First of all, this clicky thing, totally unnecessary. I put it in my mouth and dig around in there, I get like ink all over myself. It like doesn't even get anything out for that matter. It's like, it's the worst toothpick ever. Okay, it is a worst toothpick. So now that's true. It is the worst toothpick ever. So you would have to say, well, were you in the meeting when Bic designed the pen? So what is it for? So it's like, well, you can't evaluate anything unless you know what it's for. And that's where he missed the entire point. So we have to understand what was God creating the world for, and what is the purpose of the world, and then we can evaluate how well God did. So for this, we need to go to ideas that are very beautifully laid out in Mesilat Yesharim, which is the path of the just. It says, what we need to know first off is that there are two worlds. There is this world, and there is the world to come. This world is the workout room, and the world to come is the spa. If you go into a beautiful hotel and they say, we have a workout room and we have a spa, you're like, great, that's amazing. And you've had a really exhausting day. And you say, I really need to go to a spa. And you go in, but you go in the wrong door. And instead you end up in the exercise room and you see people who are red-faced and they're grunting and they're sweating and they're like kind of huffing and puffing. You're like, this is the worst spa ever. These people look miserable. It's like, right, because it's not a spa. This is the workout room. The spa is over there. It says, this world is the workout room. The world to come is where we enjoy and have the pleasure of our accomplishments in this world. This world is designed for us to grow and to make something of ourselves, to make ourselves the best version of ourselves that we possibly can in the role that we have been assigned in our lives with the resources we've been given. And that is the purpose of this world. And it's not designed to be super comfortable all the time. Hopefully there are moments for rest and tranquility, for like little breaks. That's called Shabbos, where we kind of regroup, assess how we're doing, and then gather energy to keep moving forward. But that's what this world is really all about. When we understand that there is a second world, this world makes sense. Not only does it make sense, it actually can give us pleasure even when we are engaged in a stage of our life that is painful, difficult, or challenging, because every situation gives us an opportunity to grow. There's no such thing as a situation that we could be in where there's not an opportunity to become more of who I am, whatever the situation calls for. Maybe the situation calls for me to have patience, to be more kind, to extend myself, to focus more on the positive, to do something. There will always be some sort of a response that we are called upon to have. Yes, Helene.
It's interesting, but I hadn't even thought about the world to come, because when we reach, at least when I'm reading it, or I've studied a little bit, but where do we find that? Where do we see the world to come, that it's a better, because so many books, when you talk about the Holocaust, you talk about what's going on and all that kind of stuff, you go, well, why? Everyone goes, why? Why is this happening? Why is, where does that world to come? Why don't we hear about that more than I'm hearing about it, I guess? I mean, it's kind of a really interesting thought. I mean, that's like, whoa, let's talk about that,
Let's talk about that. It's huge because it is a game changer in how we understand our life. Now, what's challenging for us is because we've grown up in a Christian world, we're used to hearing a Christian perspective. For example, I remember going to funerals of people, and now they're in the arms of baby Jesus and they're happy or whatever, something like that. And we're focused on the world to come, and they're doing that as an abdication of this life. Like, we don't really focus on this world, it's for the world to come. And our Muslim brothers and sisters with the
Do the
70
same thing.
churches or whatever, that's a whole other thing. So just because people are using the same words doesn't mean that they are defining them the same. So because we've heard that associated with Christianity, we think, oh, Judaism is about the here and now. We are not concerned about the world to come. That is absolute falsehood.
False.
That's an absolute falsehood. I'll give you an example of something that comes down in halacha. One of the reasons for a Jewish divorce that there needs to be a get to spiritually divorce a couple is because if they don't have a get in the world to come, they're going to be together. Because you didn't sever the relationship here. Interestingly, the letters for the word get, gimel and tet, never appear together in any Hebrew word. So they represent the ultimate separation. Gimel and tet do not occur together. That's like, they're separate. So we have all sorts of things. We have the idea of when we do something, ilui neshama, for the elevation of the soul, like we're talking about that person's existence in the world to come. We say that, and we say Shabbat is me'ein olam haba, a semblance, a type, and a miniature version of the world to come. We talk olam haba, we talk about in Birkat Hamazon, we talk about Olam Haba. There is an idea about being what's called for us, a Bat Olam Haba, which means a woman of Olam Haba. Doesn't mean that you're already in the next world. It means you live in this world with an Olam Haba consciousness. What that means is that we understand that we are in the workshop now for the spa later. Now, one thing that we need to understand is that there's nothing that says that there's not pleasure. Okay, so when we're talking about the pleasure in Olam Haba, we're talking about the ultimate spiritual pleasure. In this world, we can actually only experience limited pleasure because we're in physical bodies. So Rav Gav Friedman does like a really great, funny, and great demonstration about this. Says, even physically, first of all, pleasure. I remember when the new Elitches, which isn't so new anymore, now it's old Elitch, when the new Elitches opened, our son, Benjamin, and his friend, Ellie Calm, bought season tickets for Elitches. It was like whatever, however much it cost. Okay, they paid for it with their own money, and they were gonna like go to Elitches every day. So how do you think that worked out? So the first week they went twice. Oh, it was great. We just go. The second week is like, we'll go once. And then, how many times did they really go? Okay, Elish has got a good deal on that. It's like, because I'm an economist, there's the law of diminishing marginal returns, which means the first potato chip tastes the best. The second, maybe the first bag tastes the best, but the second and third are not going to taste the same because there's diminishing returns because we're limited by our physical capacity to experience pleasure. So if Hashem wants to give us ultimate pleasure, it by definition must be in a circumstance that is not restricted by physical restraint, which means it has to be at a time when I am completely in a spiritual state, but I'm still me, but I don't have limitations and I can experience this. I can experience the pleasure. And think about even physical pleasures. What if I said, I'm going to give you the pleasure of, whatever, pick your 10 top physical pleasures and say you're going to experience them simultaneously. You wouldn't even be able to enjoy them because you can't take it in. So what's the kind of pleasure that we can have in this world? We can have limited physical pleasure. There is limited physical pleasure. Some people chase physical pleasure, which is the chasing of novelty, like I must go to a new restaurant, I must have a new something because I want to have more pleasure. There is physical pleasure. On Shabbos, we're supposed to have physical pleasure. That's what Oneg Shabbat means, is physical pleasure. That's why we're supposed to have nice meals, have nice clothes, food. If you're married, have marital relations. All these things are for physical pleasure, but it is still limited. But there is spiritual pleasure. There is spiritual pleasure in knowing that we are growing. So take, for example, somebody who is somebody who has Olympic aspirations. Are they enjoying their what's it called? Their practice sessions? It's like, I remember I had a friend, she was on the ice skating team at University of Denver. And so we lived in Littleton, and she got up every morning and went to go ice skate at DU and then came back to Littleton like at 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, to me, that sounds miserable, but I had no aspirations to be an ice skater. So there you go. She thought that was great. So did she enjoy it? Yes. It was hard. It was challenging. She fell. She hurt herself. She kept going. She had to go to sleep early the night before. She had to do a lot of things, but she had a pleasure in knowing that she was training for something that was important to her. God gave us the ability to have that kind of appreciation of pleasure, but it's a very high level pleasure. So usually we tend to opt for the lowest level pleasure, which is, I need some ice cream because I need some pleasure. I need something that feels good. But the higher level, and we get higher and higher, Rabbi Noach Weinberg, Mi-Tzion Tetze Torah, Zichrono Livracha, wrote and did a class on the 5 levels of pleasure and talks about the highest level of pleasure is self-actualization, where you become who you are meant to be. That's the highest level. What does it take to get there? The most amount of work, and probably a lot of suffering and aggravation and everything else along the way. So what do you need to do that? Is you need to know what we're aiming for. What am I aiming for? So it's not just like a delay of satisfaction. It's, I want the ultimate satisfaction, and I can feel a sense of joy while I'm in the process of getting there. This is why, we do things with kids and give them charts. And they get points and prizes along the way, because keeping your eye, you're going to tell a kindergartner, you're going to, I don't even want to say, go to a top university and get a good job, go to top university and end up not even knowing what you're doing. But a kindergartner can't think of that. So they get a star for, learning this is A, this is B, you got a star, and then you're going to get a little treat at the end. Even with my bar and bat mitzvah students, when I taught for 20 years, I made a chart that broke everything down into the smallest little achievements, because it's very hard to focus for a year on training and learning something. So you had to have things along the way to help us. But there is a sense of pleasure in accomplishment, and Hashem has given us this, even though we tend to distort it and put it off into things that make absolutely no difference in the world. I would say many sports achievements is like, how did that help the world? How did that help you? What did that turn you into? A lot of things that we direct this achievement energy toward, whatever the right word is irrelevant. But God gave us this desire to do that. We want to apply it in what matters the most, which is who I am. I don't know if you've seen some of the letters that the Chayalim, the soldiers, have left for their families in case they were killed. And one is from a family from Denver, Ben Zussman, his family is from Denver, who said just want his family to know he was doing what he wanted to do, what he's committed to doing, serving the Jewish people, fighting for what is right, and he did not want them to have pain. They could miss him, but he did not want them to be crying and being miserable. The mother, I don't know how she could do this. The mother of one of the soldiers who was accidentally killed by IDF was like, I just want to hug all the soldiers. Where does that come from? Where does that come? God forbid we shouldn't be tested in any of that. But where does this come from? These people were just kind of living their ordinary lives, a few months ago. Where does that come from? It comes from having I'm here for a very high purpose to maximize and self-actualize. I don't know what the expiration date is on that plan. which means I probably should be paying attention every day because I don't know when I'm going to be called up and when that evaluation is going to be. Because what's going to be the question that's going to be asked of us? How is this all evaluated? So each of us is here and plays a certain role. Now, this isn't like in India, like the caste system where like you were here and you must be in this locked position. Our roles can change and they can modify. But in any moment, whatever the role is we have, whatever the job is that we have in front of us, there's only one question. How well did you play your role? And it may be my role was to be, God forbid, suffering with chronic illness my whole life. My role was, God forbid, to have family members be killed. Who knows? My role was this. I don't know what my role is. I can't always tell what it is going to be. But I know that in that moment, what my response is what's the best version of me that I can be in this situation? And that's the only question I really need to have, is what does God want from me in this situation, given my talents, my abilities, my strengths, my weaknesses. When we go to the parsha, we see that Yaakov gives his sons blessings that you wouldn't really say it was a blessing. If you said this to some of your kids, they'd be like, that didn't really sound like a blessing. It sounded more like I don't know. It could even be whatever. Discipline, tochacha. You're telling me something I don't really want to hear. If someone says, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, this is your challenges, it's like a SWOT report. These are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, these are your opportunities, these are the threats. Now that you know that, whatever comes your way, that's what I want you to use in order to respond. Because your goal in this world is to make yourself into the person you want to be for eternity, so that you can enjoy the pleasure that goes along with what you have achieved. Because God doesn't want to pay us in monopoly money. God wants us to be able to have full spiritual pleasure and enjoyment for eternity. How are we going to do that? We need a way to do it. And he gave us a body in order to do things in this world. He gave us the Torah, which says like there's 248 positive mitzvot to go with the 248 parts of the body for us to self-actualize so that we can become the full expression of who we are meant to be in this world. When we understand that, it changes how we experience the challenges that we face. And we're like, oh, here is another opportunity. Here's another opportunity. Why do people volunteer to do things that are dangerous? How do they do that? My nephew is on a team that goes in to retrieve casualties from Gaza, and they're dealing with booby traps, whatever. And it's like, and the joy on his face, and he's not like psychotic, like the joy on his face to be able to do this holy work in a safe way in such a dangerous, horrible situations. Like, who does this? Why do people become firefighters? Why do people become police officers? Why do people do anything where says risk of life and limb top on the list? Who does this? I have a friend whose son is in search and rescue, diving into murky water. Who does this? Because God did implant in each of us a desire to be that person. It doesn't mean we have to be on a search and rescue team. It doesn't mean you have to go into Gaza. But what it means is that there is a very special level that awaits us of true pleasure and enjoyment in this life when we understand what it's for. Most of us are trying to just stay safe. Just stay safe. Just don't want anything. I don't want anything to happen. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be annoyed. I don't want to be, overwhelmed. I just want to, have some rest and relaxation. I just want to retire. Okay. So it's like, you don't get to retire. You don't get to retire. I think how I started out, what I shared about the women learning Torah here, about the vast difference of the women in Israel who are in my Shabbos afternoon group, who are all women pushing strollers, and the women here are pushing walkers, but they were all wanting to learn Torah. It's like, you could just retire. You could say, seriously, I'm at this age, do I really need to learn some more Torah? Like I've read it 4,000 times. Like how much do I need to read this? Why do I need to learn? It's like, because there's still more. The task is unending. It is unending to be able to grow. And they dedicated this new Torah, and it's very sweet here. Sometimes you'll go to a synagogue, many times synagogue, those Torahs are very, very heavy. And when they have Hagbah lifting up the Torah, and you kind of sometimes wonder, some of them who are lifting them, whether hopefully God willing, they don't drop. So here, all the Torahs are lightweight Torahs. So because these are elderly men who are lifting up these Torahs, I still kind of wince, but it's like, okay, so this new Torah is like a little Torah, because it suits the people. But it's like everyone is excited. This woman who, I don't know, she must have been like in her 80s, and she's standing up on a chair dancing. I thought, please don't fall off. Dancing when the Torah was coming in. This liveliness for like more Torah, more connection, more growth, more inspiration. I don't know what all the other people are doing here in Century Village, but to see a group of people who are committed to Torah study, Jewish life and learning is just really amazing. It's really amazing. So that's who we are. This is who Beit Yaakov, the house of Jacob, is. This is who Bnei Yisrael is. And God wanted this set very clearly in Jacob's life. So he had to be reprimanded like to the nth degree of like, it's not quite perfect. You misunderstood your life just a little bit. You need to have clarity, and your children need to have clarity about who they are and what they're doing here. So I'll share in the last few minutes what Rabbi Schaefer shared about what keeps us from saying, okay, I got this. I am on this path. No problem. So what's part of our problem? So he sums it up in 3 mistakes that we make. Maybe not all of us make all of them, but we might be making some of them. Mistake number 1 is that we don't have really such a clear idea. Why should we? Because we haven't been there and come back. We don't have a clear idea about Olam Haba, this world to come. Again, we're influenced by the Christians, and we're thinking of angels. So we have this like view of like, we'll all be like these like angels with white wings, like fluttering around. And we'll all be happy. It sounds more like, we'll be on Prozac or something. Like, we'll be all happy, fluttering around. He says, that's not it. God willing, we will be happy and experiencing pleasure, but there will be a vast range in different people's levels of pleasure based entirely on those people's efforts, not their accomplishment, but their efforts. What did you try to achieve in your life, in your spiritual growth? And we will see, it's like if you go to the gym, there's some people who are more buff, less buff, but there's kind of a range of what the human physical body is capable of. There's a limit. In the spiritual realm, there is no limit. So there are going to be some people who are kind of down really in the South stands, they're going to be like, hopefully there, but really low level. And there's some people who are going to be radiating and beaming with spiritual energy and connection because of what they did and what they accomplished in their lives. So we're not going to be all like little angels fluttering around. And I have to say, some people have even, I think is even a more unfortunate perspective. I've been to funerals where people talk about their loved ones who passed away, say, yeah, Uncle George, he always enjoyed a great cigar and playing cards with his friends. And I'm sure he's up there with Uncle Bill and they're playing cards together and smoking a cigar. Like, if that's what you think is awaiting you, you are in for a really big surprise, because that's not happening. So if that was how you pursued pleasure in your life, thinking that was real pleasure, you're going to be very disappointed and very bored, because that's not happening up there. So we need to have some clarity, without obviously having directly experienced it, to understand, what does deep spiritual pleasure feel like? How much it fills us with a special kind of joy, and we can tap into it when we've had moments of personal greatness, where we've withstood a test, like Yosef HaTzadik, withstanding the test of Potiphar's wife. That was really hard, and he almost caved. But what did it feel like when he didn't? What does it feel like to overcome temptation, laziness, whatever it might be, limitations that self limitations that we've imposed, on who I am as a Jewish person, what do I observe, what do I do, what do I learn, all those things, all those limitations. How good does it feel to break through that and see that I could be somebody even more elevated, bigger, greater, more amazing? That is a deep, deep pleasure. And that's going to be reflected in the world to come. The second mistake people make is that they think that they won't really be in the world to come, because we talk about the neshama. And if you're like me and you grew up with the neshama being like the pintala yid, like this little spark of God that's in me, that's going to the world to come, and I am going in the ground. How many people have a lot of difficulty at a funeral watching a burial when a person's body is put into the ground? They're like, I can't take it. They're like suffocating, like they're covered with dirt. It's like, that's not them. That's like taking off your coat and your hat and burying it like you would bury, I don't know, a book. It's a garment. The body is the garment. You are who is going to Olam Haba. The you, the me, I, the one who said those things, the one who did that act, the one who learned that Torah, the one who did that act of chesed, I am going to Olam Haba. Not, and it is my neshama, we call it a neshama, but that neshama is the most me that there is. My body is not going. But in ourselves, we cannot think of it's like, because we overly identify with my body. It's like, if my body's in there, that must be where I am. It's like, that's not where you are. It's not where you are. Your garment is there. You are going up. You are going up. So that's the second mistake. So the first is, we've got the angels with like white fluffy wings, all kind of floating around together on Prozac or having a cigar. Both wrong concepts. The second is, it's not really me. It's my neshama. I'm really in the ground. So what difference does it make? It's really nice, Rabbi, that you're talking about the Olam Haba, but I'm not going to really be there because I'm going to be in the ground, which makes me very unhappy. So we have that. So the third mistake is that we don't think it really applies to us because we don't intend to die. Even though we know we are. I can say intellectually with absolute certainty that I'm going to die, God willing, at 120. But the truth is, we live our lives as if that's not really going to happen. It may happen to other people, but it's not really going to happen to me. Because I'm so alive. I have all these things. I'm sitting in my condo. Like, how could that happen to me? So we don't really believe it. And part of it is a chesed that God does for us to shield us from that awareness, because it could lead to a sense of despair. It could be eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow we die. It could be like, so what's the difference? I'm here a short time, might as well enjoy it. Or it could be like, after all that, I'm going to die? Why bother? So while we think, oh, well, if I was really aware, that would be good, not necessarily. And if I'm not aware, not necessarily. So we exist in this quasi illusion of knowing, I mean, I'm sitting here, and maybe wise, and sometimes it's like, I have to say, it was really part of the culture shock coming here to Century Village after being in our neighborhood in Israel. In our neighborhood in Israel is like, I'm the oldest person. Here, I'm like the youngest person. And it is a little disconcerting seeing people who are with walkers and oxygen and all this other stuff. It's like, these people are old. So I said to somebody when we were at the Sefer Torah, I said, I feel like I should give my seat to one of these older people here. So the woman sitting next to me, this happened, I know, from Denver. She says, they're not any older than you are. I'm like, they're not? Like, I thought I was young. They look old. So like, I think of myself as young. So it's kind of a wake-up call. It's like, actually, we are not going to be here forever. which means that time is limited. It says God gave us a limited life to help us. To help us. It says, human beings used to live a really long time. If you look at the beginning of the Torah, it's not because they counted time differently or any of those things. People lived a really, really long time. If you knew that you were going to live until about 920, when do you think you would probably get your act together? Like 915. Okay, like, okay, I must be coming into my final years. So God is like, you know what? Too much time can do too much damage, not enough progress. I think we need to shorten it. It says, what's a lifespan? A lifespan is 70 years. Okay, it says King David lived 70 years. 7 times 10 is considered complete expression. If we get more than that, it's amazing. But 70 years is considered a lifespan. When we have that and we have a sense that there's a deadline, human beings tend to be energized by deadlines. Friday afternoon, getting ready for Shabbos, all the tasks that didn't get done during the week are all of a sudden, oh, you got to get this done before Shabbos. You're going on vacation. Why do you start doing all the things, all the chores that you didn't get done? Oh, now I have to do this before vacation. I need to do this before I leave town. It's like, why? Because we have a deadline. It says when we have a deadline, it actually focuses our attention and our energy to accomplish. We are supposed to, it says like we said Shema now when we first started, but one of the reasons we say Shema before we go to sleep is we don't know if we're going to wake up in the morning. So we know, but how many of us really believe that? When I go to sleep, honestly, I'm pretty much counting on the fact that I'm going to be up in the morning and I'm going to be alive. I'm pretty much counting on that. It's like, why? Why? Well, because I woke up yesterday. It's like, okay, and what does that have to do with tomorrow? Nothing. So we have an illusion that what is will continue and that we have plenty of time. It says, but the time is ticking. And it says, and when we have less time, it says, why often do people experience actually amazing spiritual growth in their later years? Is because some say, oh, well, people are bargaining with God. It's not bargaining with God. It's the reality that my life is short and that my days are numbered. So we can understand why we're told that it's better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting. To go to a house of mourning can be sobering to the extent that it's motivating, not in a way that's depressing, but it's galvanizing, that gives us chizuk, that gives us strength to hang on, hang in there, embrace the challenges, do the work. We are in the gym. We are in the workout room. We are building our spiritual muscles. We are creating ourselves. We are creating the self that we want to be for eternity. That self is going to be able to experience pleasure. Again, not that we don't have pleasure here. We do have pleasure here. But part of the pleasure is I have the pleasure of knowing that all of my efforts make a difference. And it's not, some people say, oh, the way you live on is in the memory of other people and you're in the hearts of other people. It's like, what if you didn't know anybody else? What if everybody you knew also died? Does that mean you no longer live on? That's not how we live on. We live on because the human being, the being part, not the body, is eternal. We are eternal. Our bodies are not, and we are not our bodies. Our bodies are a tool that God gave us to use in this temporary world, under temporary circumstances, to grow and to develop, so that we can get up each morning and say, let's go, let's grow. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, hang on, hang in, and move forward and live the life, the best life, and make the best decisions and grow at every opportunity where everything counts, every word. A bracha said over a glass of water, a Shema said before you go to sleep, a smile given to a stranger, a friend, a kind word shared, anything, all of it counts. All of it counts, and all of it shapes who we become for eternity. Vayechi and Jacob lived. He lived, he thought he only had 34 good years, but he really had 147. He didn't realize. A little bit missing. We're not expected to be at the level of Yaakov Avinu. We are not patriarchs and matriarchs, but we are their descendants. And we have the opportunity and the wherewithal to be able to, sorry, spam call. We have the opportunity and the ability to take the lesson from Yaakov and be the best version of ourselves, just as he was obligated to be the best version of himself as we move forward into the next book of Torah. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everybody. And if anybody has any questions or anything, feel free. I can stay on before we go out to our grandkids for.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shalom.
And
So-
thank you. It was lovely.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you, Ellen. This was really special.
Ah,
Very
was it-
special. Thank
I feel
you.
like I've been to my trainer, my spiritual trainer.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Ellen. Very
My
good.
pleasure.
yeah.
My
How are
pleasure.
the babies? How are the babies?
Ellen,
Everyone's great. Thank you. So
For one
excited.
baby.
Ellen, I went
Yes.
on the Aish Solidarity mission.
I'm so sorry. Hold on one second. I'm not sure why someone keeps answering.
It's Rhoda.
Yes, Rhoda.
I went on the Aish Solidarity mission. It was amazing,
I'm so glad you were able to do that.
so inspiring.
What,
When
to
someone
Israel?
whose husband was killed on October 7th, she's living in a hotel with 5 children, and she gave us chazak.
So amazing.
Wow.
Beautiful.
So you went to Israel? Wow, that's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, Rabbi Meyer did a trip.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know. Amazing. Kol hakavod. Kol hakavod. Yeah,
So-
please keep our love to Audrey and family. Send a
Thank
picture to
you.
see all growing. How old are
Thank
they?
you.
The baby almost 1? No, 6 months?
8 months old. 8
8
months
months.
on the 8th night of Hanukkah. Let's see. I think, Helene, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. My husband and I are thinking about coming to Israel maybe in the end of April, May. And,
Wonderful.
And I guess the question for me, more than him, he hasn't been there for a very long time. So he wanted kind of like, what's open, there, museums open, if there's, what kinds of things are there. But for me, and I'll put that separately from what you're saying again, I did Sherelle many years ago. And if I come there, what kinds of things can we do as a volunteer?
All sorts of things, and it'll depend on when you come of what will be needed then. But if you want to be in
Yeah.
touch with me, I can send you information.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Also, the Shaliach's office will have information for you also from the Federation. But you can be in touch with me. There's all sorts of things from agricultural work to all sorts of volunteer opportunities. There's
Okay.
so much to do. Yeah.
Okay. Because that's
Yep.
it's something that I would really, really, I mean, I love Sorel. It was just the most wonderful thing I've done. And would love to do that again. I don't need to see Masada or, I don't
Yeah.
want to do it. I have
Yeah.
no desire to do that, but to do something would be much more helpful.
Coming to help.
Are you at the same, your phone number, are you at the same number that, I don't know if I have it or not.
So you should call you can be in touch with me through WhatsApp. My WhatsApp number is my American phone number,
Okay.
which
I
is,
think I'm not sure
give it to you. I can tell you it's 720
uh-huh.
232 3121.
Okay, Ellen. And I have a lot of other questions about what you were talking about, but that's for another time,
Okay.
but
All right.
that was just so inspiring. Thank you so much and good job. And
pleasure.
I will be in touch.
Okay, be in touch. We can talk. Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Bye.
All right.
Good Shabbos. Oh.
It's Shabbos, everybody. Yes,
Ellen?
Carol. Yes.
Ellen, Isabel says thank you for your condolences, and she's about her buddy. Yeah, she's.
I'm so sorry. I'm so glad that you were able to bury
Yeah.
him on,
Yeah.
property and have him be close and know where he is.
Right. She was adamant that we do it that way.
I understand. All right.
Okay.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Shabbos for the Shabbat Chazak and Benit Chazek, and we should just find strength from one another and hold on to each other, and that's how we will make it through. All right, take good care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.